Welcome to the channel Stories of Forgotten Lives. Today's story takes us back to 1912 and reveals the extraordinary journey of Joseph, the only black man known to have traveled aboard the Titanic. For decades his voice was lost to history, until his story finally broke the silence. 83 years later, this is a powerful and emotional account. So take a moment, breathe, and listen carefully. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us which city and country you're watching from. Your participation helps ensure these hidden stories are remembered, not erased. Let's begin. Joseph Laro sat across from the historian, his frail hands clutching a cup of tea, the steam curling upward like memories he had kept locked away for decades. For 83 years, he had carried the weight of that night in silence, the horror of the Titanic etched into his bones, never speaking a word to anyone outside his family. But now in the quiet apartment, filled with photographs and letters, he began to speak. His voice was soft at first, almost hesitant, as if testing the air, testing the world that had long ignored him. He recounted the voyage, the excitement of boarding the Titanic, the grandeur of the ship, the laughter of passengers, mingling with the salty Atlantic breeze. And then he spoke of the collision. The instant the night changed, the icy wall that tore through the hull, the shudder that ran like a scream through the steel and wood of the unsinkable ship. He described the corridors filling with confusion, the flickering lights, the scent of salt and fear mingling in the cold air. He spoke of the officers and stewards, calm on the surface but eyes betraying panic. He recalled the desperate climb to the boat deck, carrying Louise in his arms, guiding Juliet and Simon through the throng of terrified passengers, his own heart pounding like a drum, counting down the moments of their lives. And then the lifeboat, the fragile wooden salvation, descending into the dark abyss, his daughters passing into safety as his own chance to survive slipped away. But Joseph spoke of more than terror. He spoke of courage. He spoke of the chain of strangers, each one carrying a tiny life across the yawning gap between the sinking deck and the safety of the lifeboat. He remembered the music, the surreal defiance of the orchestra playing as the sea claimed the ship, their melodies floating over the chaos, offering a bizarre comfort against the roar of rushing water and the screams of the dying. He spoke of Juliet's hands clutching Simon and Louise, her face pale but resolute, her eyes holding a mixture of horror and unbroken determination. And he spoke of his own final moments, standing at the railing, watching the only family he had ever loved slip away into the darkness, raising his hand in a silent promise he knew he could never fulfill. Yet in his telling there was something else, a sense of justice finally found. After years of being invisible, overlooked, erased by history because of his skin, Joseph's story now had a voice. He spoke of the aftermath of Juliet, returning to France with their children, carrying the grief, the fear, and the memory of a husband and father who had sacrificed everything to protect them. He spoke of raising Joseph Jr., the son who would never meet his father, the child whose life was a quiet testament to Joseph's courage and love. He spoke of the decades of silence, of watching the world remember the Titanic, but forget the people who were not white, the people who did not fit into the sanitized stories of heroism. And yet, despite the trauma, there was resilience. Joseph described Juliet's strength, the way she had shielded her children from the worst of the truth, giving them a life built from fragments of memory and photographs. He spoke of the loneliness, the grief, but also the love that persisted, the bonds that death could not sever. As he recounted his story, it became clear that the tragedy was only one part of a larger narrative, a story of survival, of courage, of the cost of love in a world that too often fails to see the humanity of those who do not fit its narrow expectations. By the time Joseph finished speaking, the historian had tears in his eyes. He had heard countless Titanic stories, read every survivor account, studied every detail of the ship and its sinking, but nothing had prepared him for this. He had never known the story of the only black man aboard, the father who had given his life for his children, the husband who had faced the impossible and still found a way to protect those he loved. For decades, Joseph had been invisible to history, a shadow among the legends of the Titanic. But now at last, he had a voice, and through his voice, the world remembered Joseph. Larousse's story did not end with the sinking of the Titanic. It continued through Juliet's unwavering devotion, through the lives of Simon, Louise, and Joseph Jr., and through the quiet recounting of history that finally refused to erase him. His courage and sacrifice endured, a testament to love and humanity in the face of overwhelming darkness. The world would never forget him again. The historian leaned back, letting the weight of Joseph's words settle. Outside the apartment, the city hummed, oblivious to the stories being resurrected inside. But in that quiet room, history was being rewritten. Not with dates and shit manifests, but with the raw, unfiltered human experience of a man who had been invisible for far too long. Joseph paused, looking out the window, his eyes distant, as if he were still on that frozen Atlantic night. "They remember the ship," he said softly, "but they don't remember all of us." His voice trembled not from age, but from decades of suppressed grief finally finding release. "I wasn't the hero they put in books. I was just a man trying to keep his family alive." The historian nodded, scribbling furiously, but knowing that no notes could capture the full weight of what Joseph had lived through the images he painted. The shouts, the icy water, the lifeboats, the final moments of courage were vivid, haunting, and too real to be reduced to mere words on a page. Yet there was a clarity in Joseph's retelling, a way in which the horrors of the night were balanced by the extraordinary love and bravery he had witnessed and embodied. Then Joseph spoke of the haunting aftermath, the letters that never reached their intended recipients, the faces of friends lost, the guilt of survival, and the quiet indignities of living in a world that refused to see him fully. He told of the nights haunted by the sounds of rushing water, of waking in the dark expecting to hear the screams of strangers, of dreams where the Titanic's dining room became a labyrinth of shadows and cold marble floors. But he also spoke of hope, the unexpected kindness of strangers, the resilience of Juliet, and the laughter of children who were living because he had acted with courage. He described the painstaking reconstruction of his life, the quiet heroism of everyday survival, and the ways in which memory itself becomes both a blessing and a curse. To survive, he said, is not enough. To live, truly live, is the challenge. And for me, that was raising my children, honoring my family, and never letting them forget what happened. As the afternoon sunlight waned, Joseph's story began to feel like a bridge between worlds, the past and the present, the remembered and the forgotten. The historian realized that this account was not just a Titanic story. It was a story about erasure and reclamation, about giving history a chance to correct itself, and about the enduring power of human courage. Finally, Joseph reached for a small, worn photograph. It was of the three of them, Juliet, Simon, and Louise, taken years after the sinking. His fingers traced the edges with tenderness. "They lived," he whispered. And that's everything. The historian looked at him, overwhelmed by the weight of what he had just heard. Joseph Larros had survived history's neglect, and in speaking now, he was reshaping the narrative. He had taken his place among the remembered, no longer a shadow on the margins. And though the Titanic remained a symbol of tragedy, Joseph's story became a symbol of enduring love, courage, and the quiet power of a man determined to protect those he loved, no matter the cost. Louise Larros, now 84, had finally decided it was time. She wanted the world to know her father, not just as a passenger on the Titanic, but as a man, a husband, a father, and a figure erased from history simply because of the color of his skin. She allowed the Titanic Historical Society to record her testimony, to document the details that had been kept silent for decades. She spoke slowly, carefully, recalling the small details her mother had shared, the letters that survived, and the whispered stories of a father who had sacrificed everything. She told of Joseph's bravery, his calmness in the face of chaos, his determination to ensure his family's survival, even when it meant facing certain death himself. He was more than a passenger. She said he was a man of integrity, intelligence, and immense love. He deserves to be remembered. The historical records were updated. Exhibits in museums began to include his name. Scholars and historians worked tirelessly to integrate his story into the broader narrative of the Titanic, ensuring that Joseph Larros would no longer be invisible. Children learned his story in classrooms, and documentaries finally gave him a face and a voice. But beyond the records and the exhibitions, the legacy of Joseph Larros lived on in his descendants. Joseph Jr., named for the father he never met, grew up knowing that bravery was not measured by survival alone, but by the courage to act selflessly, to put love above fear. Simon and Louise carried his memory forward, telling their children of the man who had walked into history silently, yet left an indelible mark. In the Caribbean, on the shores of Haiti, Joseph's mother had passed away without seeing the full recognition her son deserved, but the family's name had endured. Haitian historians now celebrated him, not only as a Titanic survivor's father, but as a symbol of resilience. In the face of systemic discrimination, the story of Joseph Larros became a testament to the untold narratives of history. It reminded the world that for every widely known tragedy, there were countless forgotten individuals whose lives, sacrifices, and courage mattered just as much. His story challenged historians and the public alike to ask who else has been erased. Who else deserves to be remembered? In Paris, Louise L. Roach passed away quietly, leaving behind a wealth of memories, letters, and photographs. Her decision to speak up ensured that Joseph Larros would no longer be forgotten. His name appeared on plaques, in archives, in books, and in the hearts of those who value courage, love, and the relentless fight for recognition. The Titanic itself remains a symbol of hubris, human error, and tragedy. But for those who know Joseph Larros's story, it is also a monument to heroism, sacrifice, and the enduring power of family. A man who could have been lost entirely to history now stands immortal in the collective memory of the world. And so as the Atlantic waves continue to lap against the shipwreck's remains, one story rises above the ocean's depths, that of Joseph Larros, the only black man aboard the Titanic, whose courage saved his family, and whose memory teaches us that history is not just about what happened, it is about who we choose to remember. Thank you for joining us on Stories of Forgotten Lives. If Joseph Larros's story moved you, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel so more hidden stories are brought to light. Remember, history belongs to everyone, but only if we remember all of it.